Hey Wargamers, today we finally get a chance to talk about how the Arks of Omen point update affects Tau Empire and some of its key players. Now, this is something I do fairly frequently on this channel, is run this kind of math hammer exercise and look at which units do the most damage for the points invested against a variety of different targets. And so that's just kind of a nice way to start thinking about the value or the role of different units in your army and start evaluating army composition. And of course, with this update, we had some changes that could stand to really shake things up, right? It affected a bunch of different units that were in really high priority positions. In particular, commanders went up by 10 points, ethereals went up by 10 points. That one isn't one that's really going to affect point efficiency because ethereals aren't offensive units, right? But nonetheless, it went up by 10 points. Crisis suits and crisis bodyguards went up by 5 points. And, poor bodyguards, right? We're kicking them while they're down at this point. But nonetheless, crisis suits is the more influential of those two. They went up by 5 points. Crew went up by 1 point. And then from another perspective, another rule change that really affects points efficiency across the board is that Armor of Contempt is gone. So Armor of Contempt means that, having Armor of Contempt gone means that a lot of these units that were mitigated by Armor of Contempt now kind of see a boost from having it be removed. And so we see increased efficiency of a bunch of unit types against a variety of targets, or the targets that had Armor of Contempt. And the fact that this rules update came out when it did was a little bit of bad timing for me. I had been sitting on a video for quite a while. I had all the slides prepared and everything like that, going over the Armor of Contempt point efficiency. And so that. The update came out and now I don't need to make that video, I guess. But yeah. So, with these things in mind, there's a potential for some pretty big shakeups. And so I did what I always do and updated my spreadsheets and looked at the rankings. And what I found was that, commanders, crisis suits, they're less efficient, right? Points go up, efficiency goes down. That's how it works. But that change barely affected the rankings of which are the best or the most efficient units against any target. In cases that it did make a difference, you would see commanders and crisis suits just, step down one rank and the thing that was below them step up, right? It was never a big shakeup and never, kicked them totally out of the top 5 or 6 or something like that. So it makes a difference in terms of, how many units you're able to field, but it doesn't make a big difference in terms of their relative strengths compared to other things in the codex, really. It's just a tax, right? It doesn't actually change your priorities in your army list building. What had a little bit more of an influence was having Armor of Contempt gone. Like I said, I had all these calculations done ahead of time, and so I was able to compare, Armor of Contempt, no Armor of Contempt. And again, the thing that stood out to me was that, not having Armor of Contempt means things that do mortal wounds or things that have really high AP. Those things are less advantaged under a scenario where we lose Armor of Contempt. And so things like broadsides that had been placing fairly high in a few different Armor of Contempt target classes drop down significantly because there are just better choices, like strike teams. For example, strike teams get a big leg up by having Armor of Contempt removed. Crisis suits also get a bit of a bump from that. But as far as the points changes go, there's really not that big of a deal. That Armor of Contempt change is much larger. And so if we look at the list today, it's basically the same as the list that I created last time. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out. I'll put a link in the comments for you. But yeah, that's basically still the list. So I don't need to go over it, right? It's basically the same thing. The bigger things that make a difference for your army composition are going to be the rules changes, right? So having the Arks of Omen detachment is, a complete game changer. Having flyer rules be significantly changed is a huge game changer, right? Your Sun Sharks are at a much greater disadvantage now. And of course the missions and the secondaries, that all makes a big difference too. So those are the things really we should be talking about, and we will be talking about in the next video or the video after that. And those are the things that are really making a big difference. But as far as points changes go, you're probably just going to be bringing 1 or 2 fewer drones per crisis suit unit. Maybe you drop a unit of crude hounds, that sort of thing. So the points update, not a big deal, right? So let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching and happy wargaming. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. We are probably in the final production run of the Invasive Wargaming model for the foreseeable future, so if you want to pick one of those up, head on over to Etsy and get them before they are gone. This video was made possible by my kind sponsor, so check out their link in the description below, as well as all the wonderful people over on Patreon. So if you liked this video, consider joining our community over there. Special thanks to Shifty, Durza, Everett Keller, Stephen Cowan, Jack and Acker, Jared Egler, and Scott Heater.